I have been working with the FAFSA now for about 20 years. I graduated from college and went to work for a small liberal arts out-of-state college, and we relied heavily on the FAFSA, not just for federal financial aid, but also our own institutional financial aid. In addition, now I am at Get to College, and I have the luxury of helping parents and students file the FAFSA and also understand how to file it, why you need to file it, and by when do you need to file the FAFSA. So to get started with this webinar, we're going to be talking about the free application for federal student aid, and I am going to share my screen with you. Give me just a moment to do that so that you'll be able to see the slides about the FAFSA. So when you're filing the FAFSA, you do file it online. Most students are filing the FAFSA online. Be sure to go to the correct website, www.fafsa.gov. There are some websites out there that will charge you to file the FAFSA. So make sure that you're going to the correct website if you're filing it on your own. Now, when you're filing the FAFSA, you are applying for all federal financial aid. However, the FAFSA is used not only for federal funds, but colleges use it to award their own institutional aid, as I mentioned before, and some states, including the state of Mississippi, use the FAFSA for some of their grants for eligibility. So there's lots of reasons for students to file the FAFSA. It's also free, so there's really no reason not to file it. When you're filing the FAFSA, you're first applying for federal grants. There are 4 federal grants that you will be considered to receive based on the information that you put into the FAFSA. The first is the Pell Grant, and there is a maximum amount and a minimum amount of a Pell Grant that students can receive. FSCOG is for our most neediest of students. It's an additional grant that you may receive. However, just because you receive the Pell Grant does not mean that you will automatically receive FSCOG. That will be determined based on the information that you put into the FAFSA. The Teach Grant is a loan scholarship. That basically means that you can receive the National Teach Grant if you plan to major in education, become a certified teacher, and then teach for the amount of years that you receive the Teach Grant. If at any point you do not major in education, become certified, and teach, then that scholarship or grant will turn into a loan with interest. And finally, the Iraq and Afghanistan service grants are for students who have had a parent lose their life in Iraq or Afghanistan during their service. So obviously that's a very specific grant and only eligible for students who meet that criteria. You're also applying for work study. This is what we call self-help. You are able to work on campus for minimum wage, and that typically ranges for 10 to 15 hours a week. You can use the money that you earn and pledge it towards your school account, or you can use it as your spending money. And finally, when you file the FAFSA, you are applying for student loans. Now, you do not have to borrow the money, but you are filing the FAFSA in case you do decide to borrow money for school. There are student loans and there are parent loans. You can see on the screen the different interest rates for the federal student loans. Now, those are fixed rates for the life of the loan. However, you do file the FAFSA every year, and from year to year, the interest rates can change based on that year's interest rates when you're filing the FAFSA for that school year. The difference between a subsidized loan and an unsubsidized loan is that the government pays your interest if you receive a subsidized loan while you're in school. A unsubsidized loan, it will accrue interest while you're in school. And whether or not you're eligible for a subsidized or unsubsidized loan will be determined by the college. You can borrow money to go to graduate school or professional school, and then of course parents can borrow money. When it comes to student loans, students do not need a credit check or a cosigner. However, for the parent loans, they do have to have a credit check, and a parent may be denied if they apply for a student loan to help pay for the expenses for their child to go to college. In both cases, for students and parents, there's a limited amount of money that you can borrow each year. Now, October 1st is when the FAFSA opens. So for you senior parents out there, you can file the FAFSA now for your senior. You're applying for the 2018-19 school year. So you're filing the FAFSA for fall and spring of next year. If we have any junior parents out there, mark your calendar that October 1st of 2018, you can file the FAFSA for your son or daughter. And it is based on the previous tax year. So for example, for the senior parents out there, you will be using 2016 tax information when you are filing the FAFSA. You do file the FAFSA every year, so each year that you file, you'll be using the previous year's tax return. Now, when you're thinking about filing the FAFSA, it is the student's application. It is the student's FAFSA. So the student's information will always be listed. However, there is a question as to whether a student files with a parent or by him or herself. So let's determine whether a student is dependent or independent. So for a student, most likely they will be dependent. That means that they will file the FAFSA with either a biological or adoptive parent. In no case does a student file the FAFSA with a grandmother, an aunt, or a sibling. The student must use, if they are dependent, a biological or adoptive parent. Now, a student can be independent if they meet certain criteria. That would mean that the student would file the FAFSA without a parent, only including the student's information. So let's talk about what may determine if a student is dependent or independent. For a student to be independent, they must mark yes to at least one of these criteria. If a student marks no or answers no to these criteria, they are automatically a dependent student and must use a biological or adoptive parent on the FAFSA. So to be independent, a student must be 24 years of age or older. They must have already had a bachelor's degree, working on a master's degree, or a professional degree. They must be married or have a child that they support more than 50% of that child's welfare. If they are in the active military or a veteran. If they, since the age of 13, if both their parents were deceased, if they were in foster care or a ward of the court. If the student is an emancipated minor or an unaccompanied youth or in legal guardianship, that student, if they're able to answer yes to any of those questions, that student can file the FAFSA without a parent or independently. If you answer no to these questions, you must file the FAFSA as a dependent student with a biological or adoptive parent. Now, we receive lots of questions about which parents you filed the FAFSA with. So let's give you some examples. A student would file the FAFSA with a parent if both parents, both biological or adoptive parents, are living in the household. And if both biological and adoptive parents are living in the household, the student has to list both parents' income and assets on the FAFSA. Now let's say that the student's parents are divorced and the student lives with mom most of the time. Then mom's income and assets must be listed on the FAFSA. So if you have a divorce situation, you always ask the question first, who do I live with the most? And it is that parent that you list on the FAFSA. If you live with your parents equally, then you would list the parent who provides the most financial support for you. Now, once you've determined which parent is listed on the FAFSA with you, you must also list that parent's spouse. So let me give you an example. If your parents are divorced and you live with mom and mom has remarried, then mom and stepdad's income and assets must be listed on the FAFSA. So in no case do you list the parent that claims you on the taxes. We have a lot of questions of students and parents that say, well, my son lives with me, but his father claims him on the taxes. You never consider which parent files the student on the tax return. You always answer the first question, who do I live with the most? Then you answer the question, who provides the most financial support for me? Now, it's important that before you file the FAFSA, you have the necessary documents. So once you've determined who will be listed on the FAFSA, you have to gather the documents for each person. So for the student and the parent, you need legal names, social security numbers, dates of birth, 2016 tax return if you're a senior this year. Also is included untaxed income, child support, interest income, cash savings, checking accounts, stocks, bonds, additional real estate, whether you own a business or farm. So make sure you take the time to gather the necessary documents that you need to file the FAFSA correctly. This will make it a lot easier and you'll be able to move through the application quicker. Now, to sign the FAFSA, you will need an Fsa Id. And an Fsa Id is needed for both the student and the parent because both the student and the parent must file the FAFSA to be submitted. Basically, the Fsa Id is a username and password. It allows you to log into your FAFSA and also sign the document in the end. But we find that there's a lot of confusion because both the student and the parent need an Fsa Id. So it's important that when the student is creating his or her Fsa Id, that they use their email address and their cell phone number. And the parent, when they're creating their Fsa Id, make sure that they use their email address and their cell phone number. These are individual accounts for both the student and the parent. And so it's very important that you keep them separate and that you enter correct information so that you'll be able to sign the FAFSA at the end of the application. Once you complete the FAFSA, you list up to 10 colleges to receive the results. So for example, for every college that you are seriously considering, you should list on the FAFSA. The FAFSA results will be sent to those colleges. And what the colleges will do is very simple math. They will take your expected family contribution. That's the information that once your FAFSA is processed, that is what the FAFSA gives you. It does not award financial aid. It is simply a tool, an application that ultimately gives you your expected family contribution, the amount of money that the federal government thinks that your family has to send you to college. Once you have your Fsa Id and your expected family contribution, it will be sent to the colleges, and the colleges are responsible for processing your student financial aid. So once the school, the college, receives your expected family contribution, or EFC, it is simple math. They take their total cost of attendance, they subtract your expected family contribution, and that equals your financial need. Now, your financial need will be different at each school that you list on the FAFSA because their cost of attendance is different. At each school across the country, their total cost of attendance is different. So your financial need will be different at different schools. So you could say that if you're looking at a private faith-based institution, I have heard some students tell me that they're too expensive, their price is higher. However, once you submit your FAFSA, you may see that you have a greater financial need at those schools, and you could receive more funds to attend a private school than you do a public school. So if you think that a private college would be a best fit for you, I encourage you not to overlook that school because you think it will be too expensive. It's always best to keep your options open and to send your FAFSA results to those colleges to see what type of financial need you have at those colleges. Now, it's also important for you to know that you must have applied and been admitted to the college before they process your financial aid. So make sure, if you're a senior parent, that your student has begun the application process and submitted his or her transcripts and test scores so that they can be admitted to the college. Then, once they receive your student's FAFSA results, then they will process the financial aid. If the student has not been admitted to the college, then the FAFSA results will just sit there until the student is admitted, and then they will be processed by the college. For you junior parents that are on the webinar, it's important for you to know that we have an EFC calculator on our website. So, for example, if you're thinking, I would really like to know what my expected family contribution is because we're starting to plan for college, and it's good for us to know what we may be expected to pay. You can go on our website, gettocollege.org, and you can put in your student's information, parent information, and you can see what your expected family contribution will be. This is an excellent tool for you to determine what you may be looking at to pay for college in the future. Once the college has received the student's expected family contribution or FAFSA results, you will receive a student aid report. If you listed an email on the FAFSA, you will receive the SAR or student aid report via email. If you did not list an email on the FAFSA, then you will receive the SAR in the mail. The SAR is basically a copy of your FAFSA. It has the FAFSA questions and your answers listed. So it's important for you to review this. Make sure that everything that you submitted on the FAFSA is correct. If not, you can always go back to the FAFSA, log in, and make those necessary corrections. Once a college receives the FAFSA results and your student has been admitted to that college, they will process the student's financial aid and submit an award letter to each student. Now, many colleges are not mailing letters any longer. You may receive a letter in the mail with your financial aid award from a college, but many colleges are now moving to posting their financial aid award packages on their web portal. So it's important for your student, especially seniors, to be checking their web portals with each college that they have been admitted to, because colleges will start to post information. They may ask for additional documents. They may need you to complete additional forms before your financial aid can be processed. So make sure that your student is checking those portals so that they can be aware of what they need to do next in the process. Through these web portals, that's also where the students will be accepting their financial aid once they've made a final decision. So make sure that they keep in touch with the college in that regard. As Malia mentioned in the beginning, we service the state of Mississippi. The way we do that is through 3 centers. I am a college counselor and assistant director on the Gulf Coast. So I'm at the Get to College Center in Ocean Springs. We also have a Get to College Center in Jackson and North Mississippi in South Haven. So we are here for you to help you file the FAFSA, help you with financial aid questions and concerns. So call us. You can make appointments online, or you can call the center, whichever center is closest to you, and we can help you individually either file your FAFSA or answer any financial aid questions that you have. We also offer remote assistance for the FAFSA. So, for example, if you're unable to make it to a Get to College Center, we can make an appointment for you to receive remote FAFSA assistance. That means that you could be at your home, at your computer, and we would be here at a Get to College Center, and we would help you complete your FAFSA remotely. You just call one of our centers, make the appointment, and we're happy to help you any way that we can concerning the FAFSA or financial aid.